greatest gift we can give our kids is time. Now, we could argue the greatest gift you can give your kid is failure, if we're looking at what we just talked about. Now, I'm at a talk and I was kind of mentioning the greatest gifts, and a woman yelled out, "No, the greatest gift you can give your kid is Jesus." And I said, yes. You ever heard the quote, "We're so spiritually minded, we're no earthly good"? Now, here's the problem. I don't like that quote. I think we're to be spiritually minded. We're talking about parenting, we're talking about time and things. Of course, Jesus is the best gift we can give our kids, but what we're talking about right now is a little something different. Now, I want to give you a context, which is my favorite, which is why I have these here. This is called the marbles analogy, the marbles story. I've heard it called many things. Now, I've heard it also been quoted kind of after Psalm 90:12, which says, "Teach us to number our days that we might get a heart of wisdom." Here's the analogy. The day you have a child, you have, and this is 936 marbles. Basically, every week, if you took one marble out and put it somewhere else, this would actually be finished the day your kid turns 18, which for most of us means they're heading off to college, university, or they're heading more into that next phase of life. Now, if you had a middle school kid, this is how many marbles you have. See the difference? And this is actually me personally. This is how many I have with my son. 52. Because this is his last year of grade 12. Now, how does this change things? If you look at this chart at the bottom one, it's not talking about weeks anymore, but it's talking about occasions, Christmases, birthdays, summers. Summers is always an interesting one. I've heard many times written, it's called the 18th summer, which was what we just had with my daughter. It's kind of this transition from being a kid into being an adult. Not saying you don't have summers anymore, just that it kind of changes. But the idea of this is simple. What are you going to do with your time? It's this idea of a marble every week, knowing that time is fleeting. I know someone who put M&M peanuts into this. You can use anything you want, but the idea is just this tangible way to realize that time is fleeting. What will you do different? So some people take it out and say, what did I do this past week? Or what I would do is take it out and say, how will I use this time better the next week? Family dinners, watching your kids' activities. My son was on, I think it was a baseball or soccer baseball team, and it was June of his grade 8 year, and I'm there watching, and another father's with me, and we were the only two people there for both teams. 15 kids or so aside, we were the only people there, and I said to the dad, "Are you going to stay the rest of the day?" And he's like, "I wouldn't miss it for the world. This is the last time we will watch our kids in grade 8. Right? No regrets. If you have a chance, go and do it. How will you spend your days off? Helping kids with your homework, going to church as a family, tucking them into bed. If you're doing that to an 18-year-old, you're overparenting, right? Younger kids, talking to them on the couch. This is bigger and bigger as your kids get older. Family vacations, family staycations, games night. Now here's the interesting point. When I speak this to an audience in front of me, this is the quietest the audience ever gets in this talk. I watch shoulders droop, I watch tears roll down cheeks, and I watch people look down because we as parents begin to grieve. Now, I think parents begin to grieve prematurely. Some parents grieve when their kids aren't babies anymore. Parents my age are grieving as their kids head off to college, university, because the idea is once the marbles are gone, like we don't have any kids anymore. And I would say we need to call this a marbles analogy, and here's what I add in with a twist. So going back to the parenting stages we had before, discipline, training, teen, at that point the marbles will be gone. As a side note, this isn't perfect. Unless your kid is born like September, whatever of a year, it's not like the last marble comes out. My daughter's a March baby, my son's a November baby. So it's not perfect. It's kind of like in June of the graduating year, you'd either be out of marbles or you dump out the rest. But here's the kind of with a twist. Every time you then do anything for your kid, you take your empty jar, not full, and you take a marble and put it back in. Anytime you support, encourage, mentor, you cook dinner for, take them out for dinner, you talk on the phone, FaceTime, Skype, you buy gifts for them, or in time they become, they're dating someone, engaged, and then married. Now you have a son or daughter-in-law, and in time you have grandkids. Anytime you build into any of those people in any way, put a marble in. Someone said, "What do I do when my jar's filled?" I'm like, if it took you 18 years to get rid of the jar, I think we can all fill this in a lot quicker than that. But when you do, pat yourself on the back. You've been building into your kids, your grandkids, your son or daughter-in-law for a long time, and then dump it out and start again. I love that idea, the idea that it's kind of your kids are always with you, but it's something that gives you a tangible idea, looking how to build into them again. I'm going to get rid of these for the rest of the talk. It was my first time ever speaking with marbles. I put these 3 marbles things in my car. I did not have these jars with lids. You might understand where I'm going here. I'm driving along the highway. I had 3 of these jars in the back seat. There's like 2,000 marbles here, and a transport truck cut me off. Slammed on my brakes, and I wasn't thinking at that moment, am I going to die? I'm thinking, do I have lids on the marbles? I didn't. They all fell over, and I'm trying to drive and hit the brake, and there are thousands of marbles all, like it was the most dangerous situation ever. Again, I would encourage you to do this. It's not just an analogy, right? It's something you can practically do. There's a really great book called It's Just a Phase by Reggie Joyner and Kristen Ivey. I would encourage you as a parent, read anything you can get from these people. Fantastic. Just writings on students of all ages and stages. And there's actually It's Just a Phase books for each phase and age and stage kind of your kids. But they talk about a really interesting thing, which is just the idea of time. If you have a preschool kid, you have 12 hours a day with them. If you have an elementary school kid, you have about 6. If you have a middle school, grades 7, 8, for some boards, 7, 8, 9, you have 4 hours a day. If you have a high school kid, maybe 2. If you have a high school kid like mine, you know that it could be, hey, I'm going out for a coffee, I'm going out for dinner, a buddy of mine will drive me home, I'll be home later tonight. Like, it's not the same as when your kids are little. The point is, time matters. So morning matters for all ages and stages. I'm an early bird, so my wife and I I'm at home in the morning. And so when my kids get up, I'm there, right? Attachment parenting, right? I walk through anything my kids need to talk about, get them ready for their day, and off they go. Driving time matters. Anytime, and I have a YouTube video for this, anytime your kid asks you for a ride, the answer is yes. Have you ever been in a car with 5 kids and they just start talking and you're like, do they realize I'm right here? Like, the conversations they have are some of my favorite ever. But driving in a car with my son or my daughter have been the best talks we've ever had. Mealtime matters, and this is one of the biggest things. Mealtime matters, and we're going to talk about this in just a second. And bedtime matters less as your kids age. Like, if you're tucking in, as we just kind of joked about, your older 18-year-old, we're over parenting, but as your kids get older, it might just be good night, love you, something as simple as that. But when they're younger, they're some of the most precious times of reading a story, right? Tucking them in those things. Going back to family dinners, if I could encourage you something here, it is eat together as families. A number of studies, there was a number of them from Columbia University a few years ago. If you eat together as families, I think it was 3 dinners a week, all these good things happen. And it was about all things like, sex, drugs, all these other things, doing well in school, just by eating together as a family. I'm at a talk a number of years ago, about a year ago, and a father kind of said, we don't ever eat together. I'm like, what do you mean? He says, well, never. Maybe occasions. We usually just put a buffet kind of out and the kids grab it and they all go and watch TV in different places, and my wife and I, with our TV trays, watch TV. But then he began to explain the disconnection in his family. Eat together. And now, even just saying eat together, I read somewhere it says the family meal can be a potent collecting ritual. I really like that. But you should be able to sit at a family table and eat dinner and have things to say. Now, as a side note, if you are struggling even talking at the dinner table, you might need a bit of counseling. And I'm not making fun of that. I'm saying there's something wrong if you as a family can't just sit and talk. Like, how was your day? How about tell me something good that happened today? Tell me something bad that happened today. Isn't there a game like Rose, Bud, and Thorn or something? Like there's all these games you can do. Josh Shipp, in his book, The Grown-Up's Guide to Teenage Humans, is that not the best name of a book ever? I just Googled a few of these. You can see here, just Google family dinner questions. And the truth is, if you ask the question, tell me something good that happened and something bad that happened, you as an adult are answering that. That's how your kids learn. You're not just at home all day doing nothing. Now, another thing, looking at the idea of time, is family scheduling. When your kids are young, it's not a big of a deal. It's a bigger deal for you as spouses and parents sometimes, but it's when your kids get into middle school with all the things they're doing. But high school, we went from having family dinners every single night of the week when I'm not away or other things, to suddenly having 2 kids who are working. My kids are both lifeguards. And there was a season where one of my kids worked like Monday, Wednesday, one worked Tuesday, Friday, and it was something like, We're just not having family dinners anymore. So we now schedule each week. I take a blank, just go into Google and get a blank weekly schedule, kind of plot in, here's what's going on, here's youth group night, or here's when my kid's going out for a birthday party, and here's when I'm traveling. We even do a bit of meal planning there as adults, which is really helpful. But it just lets you see your schedule. And we now put in like a family night. That's what we do. And if you have teenagers, plan your family nights around food. Like, you want to go for dinner tonight? Yes. Like, that's just what kids will answer. I also love this. It says, and hold on to your kids. Family outings and holidays need to be protected. It's not saying you can't bring friends along to things, but it's saying at least once a year, have time to be bored together. We made this kind of goal or promise that we were going to do a yearly family vacation, whether it's going away. Like years and years ago, we'd pull my kids out of school when it was cheap and go somewhere. Even now, it could be a staycation. We just went away for 4 days to Ottawa, if you know Canada. But the truth is, it's time to go and play together, be bored together, do things together. But if your kids' friends are there, it's hard to do. I'm not saying you can't go to the zoo or a theme park or other things. Thinking on time, and I know this is another kind of maybe overused analogy, but if you haven't heard it, I think it's an important one. It's called the jar of life. Here's the idea. If you have a jar, and then you have big rocks, little rocks, some say pebbles, like there's this, and then sand. There's a bunch of ways to do it. I've heard one with water, but the idea is this. Your big rocks in life are the main things. Faith, family, exercise, sleep, diet. If you put those rocks in first, they will actually fit. Then it's the pebbles, right? You put the smaller rocks in. This is the things you have to do. Grocery shopping, laundry, dishes, yard work, vacuuming, the list goes on. And then the last thing is sand. And I call sand social media. Doing this means nothing. Watching television, doing emails just for the sake of it, going to movies, right? This is just entertainment in life. That's the sand. Here's the thing though, if you put them in differently, if you put the sand in first, and then the pebbles, and then the rocks, they won't fit. This is an analogy. It's heavily overused on Pinterest, but I just assume you've seen this before, but I wanted to say it again to make sure that you're doing the rocks first as a family. And slow down. Not living life, but racing through it seems to be what we're doing. Ferris Bueller's Day Off from a long time ago. Life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it. There's a book called In Praise of Slow. It just talks about slowing down, slow family dinners, right? All of these things. I think sometimes we rush to cook dinner and then we rush to eat dinner. We rush to clean up dinner, to rush to do something. Like sometimes it just takes, just breathe, right? Take time to be together. And extracurricular is an interesting thing. And I just say parents need to be raising more than athletes, dancers, gymnasts, musicians, painters, and sculptors. In the book Under Pressure, I just mentioned the book In Praise of Slow. It was the same author here, Carl. He says, no one is saying that extracurricular activities are bad. On the contrary, they are an integral part of a rich and happy childhood. But just as other trappings of modern childhood, from homework to tech, are subject to the law of diminishing returns, there is a danger of overscheduling the young. When it comes to extracurricular, many children are getting too much of a good thing. And so I've coached rep baseball. All I'm saying is be careful. If you're playing, if you're Canadian, rep hockey, so many Americans rep hockey, rep sports. If you're out 5 nights a week playing hockey, those other 2 nights matter big time, right? That's when family dinners and other things matter. As a side note, even if you're doing rep sports, it's okay to be at a restaurant having a family dinner, right? It's okay to be there and you can have good conversation around those things. A few more conversations on time, and then this section is done. Big days are big deals. And this will take leadership from you as an adult. In the book, The Power of Moments by Chip and Dan Heath, they say this. They talk about transitions, milestones, and pits. Transitions are changing jobs, a new house. Milestones are birthdays, anniversaries, graduating, other things. And the pits are breakups, death, other really bad things. Now, the point with these is maybe transitions and milestones are celebrated, but I just think these things all need to be acknowledged, meaning when bad things happen, and they do, go out for dinner. Does it fix anything? No. But you're together, you laugh, you cry, you talk. Again, it's the attachment that you are a family unit and you are, we're for you, we're not against you, and we're supporting you. But I love the idea of making sure you at least acknowledge these things. So as we look at time, the four main things, marbles. Now there's actually an app by the organization called the Parent Queue. In the app, they will actually do the marbles analogy for you. It's a blog and a podcast and really great conversation, but it will do the marbles for you. Meals, I would encourage you to eat as many meals as you can as a family together. Scheduling, right? Look at scheduling and the idea of milestones. Celebrate, and you might mean putting in a calendar, graduation, birthdays, and different things. A couple books here, Grown Up's Guide to Teenage Humans, we mentioned The Power of Moments, and I'm adding one in here by Eve Rodsky. For the first few books, there's some crossover coming. Eve's Fair Play is really about domestic rebalance. Now, I need you to take these principles of domestic rebalance from a husband and wife and incorporate that into your family. It's just looking at the idea of time and chores. Probably my favorite book, I was going to say I've read in a long time. I might say this year, my favorite book that I've read, and coming out soon are these actual deck of cards of who does what jobs, but it's a great way to get your kids involved in this. Time matters. All these conversations amongst time matters. And I would say you need to begin to think through all of these thoughts in your family and where you can improve in this conversation of time.